Lipids and their structures. We've already talked a little bit in previous videos about lipids and their structure and triglycerides, but now let's look more into the actual triglycerides, essential versus non-essential fatty acids, some phospholipids and sterols, what are they used for, and let's get into a little about cholesterol and the different types and different tests thereof. So a few things to explore, let's take a look. Lipids. Triglycerides, the most common lipid, is made up of 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol. We've already gone through that, but what we haven't gotten into yet is the idea of essential and non-essential fatty acids. Basically, fatty acids are necessary for our normal cell functionality. We have to have them. But there are non-essential and there are essential fatty acids. In the case of non-essential fatty acids, those are the ones that our body can synthesize and we don't have to worry about ingesting. Sure, we end up eating them, but we can still make our own if we don't have them. While on the flip side, essential fatty acids must be eaten. You just can't make them. Your body can't synthesize these essential fatty acids. So when we start looking at them, we have omega-3 fatty acids. We have omega-6 fatty acids. Those are 2 types of the essential fatty acids. Now, omega-3, you'll a lot of times find those in fish oils. That's why it's important to eat fish a lot of times. Omega-6 fatty acids, you're going to find those in eggs, you'll find those in meat. Now, the term omega, so omega-3, omega-6, omega is referring to the methyl end of the fatty acid chain, basically the structure there. While the 3 and the 6 are referring to the position of the carbon, double bond carbon in the fatty acid chain. So each one is telling you something about what's going on. But these are going to be precursors, so things that are going to be made into. So they're precursors for alkaloids. Now, alkaloids are going to be a hormones basis that will help your central nervous system as well as the immune system. So these alkaloids are coming from the omega-3 and omega-6s. So kind of an important thing to make sure you have that functionality to help central nervous system and the immune system. But the trick is you got to balance them. Because the omega-6 fatty acids have a tendency to increase blood pressure. But on the other side, the omega-3 fatty acids are shown and known to give heart healthiness. So it's kind of a balancing act to make sure you get enough omega-6, but enough omega-3. That way they're helping the body and you're getting everything you need. But let's shift gears. So that's the essential and non-essential for fatty acids. In phospholipids, those are a different story. Because phospholipids are still using a glycerol backbone, but now it's 2 fatty acid chains and a phosphate group. And it's this phosphate group coming off that allows phospholipids to get their name, but also is going to allow them to be water soluble, which is hugely important because phospholipids are what make up your cell membrane. And your cell membrane is constantly interact with water because how much water is in your body. So this allows both water-soluble and fat-soluble items to travel through the cell membrane, either into the cell or out of the cell. Phospholipids also are great emulsifiers. Now, an emulsifier is something that will help with water and fat mixing into solution. I'm sure you've seen the idea of maybe a salad dressing or some other mixture where you see water and oil and they're separated. Well, an emulsifier helps those 2 mix together and stay mixed in a homogeneous solution. So it's kind of all mixed evenly through. doesn't separate out as easily. Now, some emulsifiers, one you might have heard of is lecithin. Lecithin, you'll find it from egg yolks, you'll find it in honey, you'll find it in mustard. And that's what times is frequently used in cooking or food preparations to get things to kind of mix and stay together. Probably an easy example to look at is mayonnaise. Mayonnaise, you're going to take the vinegar and the oil, and it needs to mix together and stay together in the mayonnaise. That's the egg yolk. That's the lecithin being the emulsifier to allow the two to mix and stay as one together. But the phospholipids are also important in our bodies. So not just for cooking and nutrition points, but because every cell has phospholipids, within the brain is about 28% phospholipid. We knew that before the brain has a large amount of fat, period, but about 28% of that is phospholipids. The liver is even more. Upwards of 66% of the liver is phospholipids. But the good thing is, your body makes the phospholipids. That means you don't have to worry about ingesting these all the time. Sure, you eat them, but having the right balance of diets for fats, mixing everything together, making sure you have the right amounts, your body's going to make these phospholipids. So it's going to allow your body to synthesize and make the phospholipids. All right, fatty acids and triglycerides, phospholipids, and now let's look at sterols. Sterols are different from fatty acids and the phospholipids, fatty acids, and the triglycerides because sterols don't have fatty acids. Instead, sterols are going to be ring-based structures. So they have a series of rings all interlocking to make up the sterol. Cholesterol is probably the most common one you've heard of. Why? Well, everyone's always worried about cholesterol because it's not good for you. Well, yes, it can be problematic if you have too much. But cholesterol in general, you have to have that in your bodies. Because cholesterol is part of your cell membrane as well. So all cells in your body have cholesterol. About 25% of the cholesterol in your body is actually found up in your brain. So again, a lot of cholesterol is actually in the brain helping it function properly. Cholesterol is used in the synthesis process of vitamin D. So when you're making and synthesizing vitamin D, cholesterol is in that process. Cholesterol helps with the formation of the sex hormones, so testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. You're going to have cholesterol also helping out in the production of the glucocorticoids. It's a grouping of hormones. So really, cholesterol is used in a lot of different things, and you have to have it to be healthy. And just like the phospholipids, your body can synthesize cholesterol. So sure, you can eat cholesterol, but as long as you have a balance of enough fatty acids and lipids and phospholipids and everything that you need, your body simply makes these sterols or this cholesterol. All right, so the three main categories of lipids. And all three of those, though, you do end up eating, but really the main thing you're eating are going to be those triglycerides. So let's take a look at the triglycerides and how your body digests them and absorbs them. Just like with any other macromolecule, that process starts in the mouth. In the mouth, you'll start with the mechanical digestion, the chewing, and that helps to break it down into smaller and smaller components. Now, the interesting thing here, though, is as you're breaking it down, remember, they're not water soluble. So that means we're going to somehow have some helping hands here in our GI tract to make this work. We'll start with the mouth and the lingual lipase. Lingual lipase will start the process. It's not going to do a whole lot. Just kind of starts the process of breaking down. It's going to help with emulsifying the fat. Emulsify is going to help to break down the fat. It's a mechanical breakdown, emulsification. But the key here is the emulsifier takes the big chunk and makes it into smaller chunks. Kind of think if you took a stick of butter and cut it in different pieces, it's still butter, but you now have all this increased surface area, because of all the cuts. It's that increased surface area that's going to help the future enzymes and components break down these fats. All right, so we swallow. Esophagus going down, not much happening. Stomach, you have gastric lipase. Now this again will help only a little bit, not a ton, but it gets things moving. From there, little bit by little bit, we're talking milliliters of fluid, not much. Little by little, it's released into the small intestines. So in the small intestines, you're now going to mix with several other components being brought in. You have, first of all, bile being secreted. Bile is produced in the liver, stored in the gallbladder, and then secreted into the small intestines. Well, if you're thinking, hold on, I don't have a gallbladder, or so-and-so I know doesn't have a gallbladder. No worries. The liver is still producing bile. Only difference is the gallbladder is not storing it. The liver is simply secreting it into the small intestines directly. So what does bile do? Bile is an emulsifier. It's going to help take those fats and break them down into smaller pieces, creating more surface area. But what's in bile? You have bile salts, you have lecithin, you have cholesterol as the three main components, all helping to break down and emulsify. You then have the pancreatic lipase. Like the name implies, pancreatic pancreas. So the pancreas is producing this lipase, which is going to then help to break down those triglycerides. But as you're breaking them down, so the emulsifier is making it smaller, the lipase is coming in, breaking it down chemically, you still need to get this through a mucus layer that's covering and lining the intestines. That mucus layer is water-based. Lipids, water don't really mix. So what ends up happening is your body's going to form these little things called micelles. Now, the spelling of this one is M-I-C, not M-I-S. So it's not like the missiles you shoot. Missile is a structure. What these micelles will do is they'll cover and coat, helping to allow the fats to go through that mucus layer. As it travels to the mucus layer, it then can be delivered to the microvilli of the small intestines. The microvilli are going to be the absorption factors, what absorbs it into the cells, these little tiny protrusions. So once you get them into those microvilli, we now have to somehow get them into the circulation of your body. Well, what the cells will do, so these small intestinal cells, they're going to create these chylomicrons. Again, structures that are meant to help cover the fats, the fatty acids. So these chylomicrons will then be sent into the lymphatic circulation. That lymphatic circulation is eventually going to get back to the blood, but in the meantime, it's traveling up from the intestines towards your chest. Because the lymph, the fluid in the lymphatic system, the lymph, will end up being dumped right into your circulatory system, just on each side of your heart. So not in the heart, but in the main vessels. Then they're in the blood. Once in the blood, they're being distributed throughout the entire body. They can be taken to cells for storage, or the cells will need them for either structural components or energy sources. They're going to places like your muscles, under your skin, heading into your abdominal region. So heading to various places in your body for use or for storage. Now, if you need it, the cells will use it as energy. But a lot of times, as long as you have enough glucose in the blood, you've got enough energy going on, that ends up putting a storage component then for the fatty acids. So it comes down to really what you're looking at there. Do you have enough energy or do you need it? Either way, it's being sent around the circulatory system to what cells need it. So all this is constantly circulating, which brings up the idea of blood levels of cholesterol. Because cholesterol is a lipid. Now, maybe you've heard of HDLs or LDLs, high-density lipoproteins, or low-density lipoproteins. Basically, as the size of these increases, the bigger they get, the decreasing density will occur. So the larger and larger are lower and lower density. So I'll start with the biggest one we'll talk about, which is going to be a VLDL, very low density lipoprotein. Now, these very low density lipoproteins are made from chylomicrons. The liver basically makes them. Remember, chylomicrons are what came out of the small intestines? That was that storage vessel that helps to circulate around the blood. This is how you can transport these lipids to various cells in your body. You're going to have another enzyme, lipoprotein lipase. Lipoprotein lipase is going to remove triglycerides off of these very low density lipoproteins as they circulate. So basically, if some triglycerides are needed over here, it pulls them off over there. Keeps stripping them off as necessary. As that continues on, those become IDLs, intermediate density lipoproteins. What that now is happening is you're still transporting fats, but they're a little different size, they're smaller. A lot of these are going to gain cholesterol while traveling. So they travel around, they're picking up cholesterol molecules, but losing phospholipids. So the composition is changing a little bit. When they get back to the liver, these IDLs will be converted into LDLs, low density lipoproteins. It's these low density lipoproteins that a lot of times we consider the bad cholesterol. So a lot of times in blood tests have a range. If you have too many of these, you have too much bad cholesterol. They're mostly made of cholesterol, at least 50%, if not more. What's happening here now is the cells are going to have receptors for these LDLs. It'll take the cholesterol, go to the cells, and then the cells can either utilize that cholesterol in the membranes, they can store the cholesterol for later, but they're basically taking it and doing something with it at this point. That's the LDLs. So once they're broken down in the cell, that's that used. Which means we have one more to talk about, HDL, high density lipoproteins. Now these are known as the good cholesterol. You want to make sure you have enough of this in your blood. These HDLs, or high density lipoproteins, they can carry cholesterol. What they do is they pick it up out of the blood and they carry it to the liver. So they're pulling cholesterol out of the blood, collecting it in the molecule, and taking it back to your liver. They're very high in protein composition. So a lot of proteins, and they'll pick up the cholesterol out of the blood. The trick though is, all these very low density lipoproteins, these intermediate density lipoproteins, these low density lipoproteins, these high density lipoproteins, to make sure they're all working properly, you need to balance your lipid intake. And it's not just balancing, make sure you get a certain amount of lipid in your diet, but it's also balancing the types of lipids in your diet. So those omega-6s, things like eggs, you're looking at poultry. A lot of times veggies even have them. Omega-3, a lot of times looking at like cod liver oil, for example, salmon, trout, tuna. Looking at a lot of different oils at this time, like for example, avocado oil, canola oil. You have olive oil, as well as walnuts and flaxseed oils also can be there. The idea is you have a range of items that have these components, but the key is you gotta balance them out. Doesn't mean you have to eat the same one every day, but have a mixture. Balance things out throughout the diet. So lipids, you gotta have them. They're essential to life in your cells, but you gotta make sure you don't have too much of them. Until the next video.